Right. Let's dive into this explainer of Colonel Brian Padayachee's incredibly dense, yet pivotal testimony before the Judicial Commission of Inquiry. If you've been tracking the fallout of state capture, you know by now that the devil is always in the administrative details. Today, we're zeroing in on the exact mechanisms used to subvert justice from the inside out. We'll be applying a strict lens, grounded in South African law and SAPS standing orders, to the raw evidence presented during this truly historic hearing. To really grasp this web of state capture and police integrity, we've got to take ourselves back to July 2026 at the Brigitte Mabandla Justice College. This is where a veteran investigator, a guy with 44 years of service under his belt, took the stand, and through his testimony, he laid bare the incredible friction between strict bureaucratic procedure and the actual pursuit of justice. It's honestly a textbook case of how the very rules designed to protect the system can be completely weaponized by those trying to break it.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll hit 5 key areas. First, the IDAC mandate. 2, the anatomy of an inquiry. 3, the Villiers docket. 4, crime intelligence manipulation. And finally, number 5, the anchor affidavit.
Starting with Section 1, the IDAC mandate, a veteran's call to duty.
The profound human tragedy of this whole situation is captured so perfectly in Colonel Padayachee's own words. He really reached an emotional tipping point on the stand. His deep-seated sense of constitutional duty was pushed to the absolute limit by the very system he swore to protect. Think about it. When a veteran who comes out of retirement specifically to fight corruption starts questioning whether the truth can even be found, yeah, you know the institutional betrayal runs incredibly deep. And remember, we aren't talking about a rookie here. With 44 years of law enforcement experience, plus commendations from massively high-profile investigations like the 2000 Nchanga massacre, his operational record is literally pristine. But, here is the real tragedy. Corrupt networks actively target and weaponize the honor of highly decorated veterans like Padayachee. They essentially use those pristine records as a shield of legitimacy, keeping these officers compartmentalized so they unwittingly lend credibility to a totally compromised operation.
Moving on to Section 2, anatomy of an inquiry, navigating the bureaucracy.
Before a single suspect is even interviewed, IDAC has to navigate what's called a Section 27 referral. Now, as Padayachee explained, this isn't just someone walking into a police station off the street to report a crime. No, it's a formal complaint, and it has to meet a very specific threshold of serious, high-profile, or complex corruption. A case committee evaluates it to establish strict jurisdictional facts. Only when those facts line up perfectly with their mandate is an investigation actually legally authorized.
So, this stepped legal framework is methodical, but it's also highly compartmentalized. You move strictly from a referral to a committee, then to a Section 2813 preliminary inquiry, and finally to a Section 281 full-blown investigation. The problem? Well, this rigid siloing creates manufactured blind spots. A senior investigator like Padayachee gets a directive from management, sure, but he doesn't actually get to see the initial Section 27 referral document himself. His tactical instructions end up completely obscured by layers of internal bureaucracy.
Which brings us to a massive structural vulnerability. Let's just compare a normal SAPS process to the IDAC process for a second. Under typical standing orders, you report a crime, and you immediately get a CAS number. Boom. Instant, trackable record. But in IDAC, a complaint triggers a preliminary inquiry first, and as Padayachee testified, no CAS number is registered until prima facie evidence is actually found. This delayed numbering system is a massive loophole. It allows early complaints to just vanish into the bureaucratic ether without a single digital trace.
As debated intensely during the hearings with Advocate Baloyi SC, this foundational difference in police standing orders is exactly where the investigative anomalies began to surface. I mean, think about it. If there's no case number on the system, how can anyone possibly track if an investigation is being deliberately suppressed?
All right, Section 3, the Villiers docket, manufactured blind spots.
When Padayachee's team eventually got their hands on the Case 404 Villiers docket, the anomalies were absolutely glaring. By dissecting this file, Padayachee realized the initial A1 statements were completely sparse, literally empty of any meaningful detail. There was clear evidence of deliberate tampering with affidavits, and most damningly of all, the docket revealed an intentional cover-up of parallel cases. Basically, Padayachee's vast experience was being methodically compartmentalized by his superiors to hide these exact procedural irregularities.
That leads us right into Section 4, crime intelligence manipulation.
According to the inquiry transcripts, this wasn't just about missing paperwork. The syndicate was actively manipulating promotional and security vetting processes. The primary goal here was to unduly benefit civilians who had zero prior policing or management experience and then insert them into highly sensitive state roles.
The syndicate's ultimate goal was absolute control. By inserting unqualified, unvetted civilian proxies into a specialized unit like crime intelligence, they were essentially capturing the state's secret services from the inside. As Padayachee's investigation revealed, Secret Service offices across the entire country were being targeted as the most likely points to launder money completely undetected. They actively obstructed justice during the recruitment and scoring panels to make sure their proxies secured the jobs. It's wild.
To stop the bleeding, Padayachee had to use his discretionary legal powers forcefully under the Criminal Procedure Act. When arrests were finally made, IDAC aggressively opposed the bail conditions. They had to strictly prohibit these compromised officials from simply returning to their crime intelligence offices and destroying whatever evidence was left. They literally had to use the law to cut the syndicate off from the state's resources.
And finally, Section 5, the anchor affidavit, building the case.
So how do you consolidate this sprawling, messy web of institutional betrayal for a court of law? Padayachee used a master document. During the hearings, the chairperson of the commission actually asked him to explain what a specific piece of evidence, labeled A32, represented. He explained that it's something investigators colloquially call the anchor affidavit.
Because Padayachee himself didn't have a standard A1 initial complaint statement, mostly because he was brought in way later to investigate the cover-ups, document A32 became his definitive narrative. The anchor affidavit ties every single tampered docket, every manipulated vetting file, and every abused procedure into one damning chronological record intended directly for the court. It forms the absolute, undeniable bedrock of the prosecution's case.
Tracking this timeline, we can see exactly how this monumental effort came together. Back in December 2024, a vague preliminary investigation gets approved. A few days later, Padayachee's team is briefed. Weeks after that, they're deploying subpoenas across the country to secure those compromised vetting and personnel files. And it all culminated in that comprehensive anchor affidavit A32, turning what was a bureaucratic nightmare into a concrete legal strike against state capture.
Colonel Padayachee's testimony leaves us with a pretty chilling realization about the true human cost of integrity. When a veteran officer steps up to do the right thing, only to find his own agency's regulations being used to blindfold him, it begs a massive question for South Africa's future. If the very institutions designed to protect the truth are weaponized against the veteran officers who serve them, who is actually left to police the police? It's something we all need to deeply consider as these systemic investigations continue to unfold.